Hey there, my name is Jessica Cooper, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Let's Drink Eco-Friendly. It's an initiative that New Belgium has decided to go ahead and attempt to put into place with the help of various investors, etc. We hope to make it a success. So to begin, our overview is going to be the problem that exists with brewing beer, why there's a need for change, basically because the longevity of the industry is really at stake. The fix, so how we are going to add a specific software to our machines and hopefully bring those to other smaller brewers around. Why we chose to kind of take off on this endeavor that is going to affect the entire craft beer industry. Why you all involved, and then how it looks for the future. So the problem and the need for change. There has been a huge craft beer explosion in the past 5 years. So in 2012, there was probably a little under 2,000 breweries, and now there are over 4,000 and counting. They're pretty much popping up everywhere. The statistics say that most of a craft brewery, which is much different than considering past times. Craft beer accounts for $196 billion in revenue a year. So with these increased revenues and these increased number of breweries, we're seeing an influx of how much beer is produced. So when you do all the math and you crunch all the numbers, there's about 11.2 billion six-packs a year that are consumed. And to produce one six-pack of beer, it is the same amount of energy that it would take to run your television for 3 hours and 20 minutes. So you do that 11.2 billion times the 3 hours and 20 minutes, and you're looking at about 15 billion days of energy used. So as I said, the longevity of the industry is not sustainable, thus creating this need for change. Outside of the energy that is used, there's also a huge problem with wastewater. So a lot of those smaller breweries, they don't have the financial stability or the the monetary resources to be able to create their own wastewater diversion systems, where basically it would take the wastewater that's produced and it would pull back and it would clean that water and we would be able to reuse it or reutilize it. So they don't have that. So there needs to be some type of reform for that as well. And that would be kind of a later phase in something like this, in which we are hopeful that first phase, the software system, will fix. So going into more about that software, the software will be created and hopefully added to our existing brewery machines to make it almost like an eco-friendly mode. So consider your vehicles, right? Most cars have that little button in your car that says eco-friendly, and we're always like, don't know what that means. But if you look it up and you research it, it actually slows the amount of gas given to your engine, and it also regulates how your air conditioner works. Now, granted, it's kind of like a stop block, but your processes move a little slower. So, for example, if you're in eco-friendly mode, sometimes because there's less gas given to your engine, it takes a little bit longer for your vehicle to actually go from, say, theoretically 0 to 60. So these processes, the brewing process might slow down, but at the end of the day, it's going to be better for the environment as a whole. So we want something similar to that eco-friendly button, and how we kind of lay it all out is the process will be about 18 months. We're looking at 2 projects at the same time. So your first project is that actual software, and the second project is the byproduct that New Belgium will be able to distribute as their own product. So there's a handful of products out there that have these really cool titles. So for example, I know there's a beer that went that they produced that they sent the yeast or the hops to space, and that was a huge marketing tool that they were able to use. So this is the first beer that's had an ingredient that was produced or has been to space. So for this project, we will be the first beer that has been processed through this eco-friendly, this really cool process to actually change how we do business as an industry as a whole. So that's kind of what we're looking at to make it unique to ours. But at the end of the day, given the very collaborative and not so much competitive nature of the beer industry, we're really hoping to spread our process to those other smaller breweries and really change the dynamic and how beer industry functions as a whole. So how we're looking at starting this process is, of course, we have engineers on staff. So we're hoping to hire these engineers to take on this task internally because we already pay them on our budget. If that's not a possibility, or if we end up needing more bodies, because obviously we utilize our people to maximum extent, we will have to reach out externally to ours and make it a new position. So that's something we really need to consider. Let me see here. So now that we've outlined kind of the basics as to what we hope to happen, I want to explain to you why New Belgium wants to take on this acquisition, this project. So the big thing is, I know some of you are sitting there saying, okay, well, this is a huge project, right? So why would you want to do this alone? And we don't. We do want to offer smaller breweries the opportunity to invest in the front end, but at the end of the day, we really don't want to pressure these folks to have to put the money into developing their own systems, because we are a microbrewery in the sense of we produce craft beers. It's not like, we're producing Budweiser, like Anheuser-Busch. So we are a microbrew with a macro brew budget. So we make a lot of money, and our profits and our revenues are pretty great comparative to some of our smaller local mom and pop type breweries. So that really just it plays a huge part. We want to, again, the big thing is that in our core values it says that we are environmental stewards, and we want to use business as a power or a force of good. So that's our hope, is to kind of further those core values and really change a system that is unfortunately broken right now. Not broken in the sense of not producing good beer, but just not the best for our environment or for the future of brewers. So again, why would we choose us is consider our past, right? So in 2015, we took to our stakeholders, which I'll talk about in a second. We are 100% employee owned, meaning our stakeholders and everyone who owns our company is employed by us. So in 2015, our bigwigs came and said, hey, listen, right, we've got this opportunity to implement wind power. Your electrical stuff, plants and things like that, we're able to pull from the sun. And stakeholders said, we love this idea. Where are we going to get the money? They started talking about it, and they actually decided to forego their own personal bonuses to implement the process of wind power. So if that doesn't speak volumes about the kind of folks that we have employed by us and, our dedication to bettering the environment, then I don't know what else does, because there's a lot of folks that would say, yeah, I'll absolutely do that, but not if it involves my money, and our folks absolutely put forward that money. So that is something that's really put us on the map. We're considered one of the top sustainable and eco-friendly breweries in the country. We have brand name recognition. Folks really know New Belgium, and especially the Fat Tire brand, and we've got that credibility. So it's a process that smaller brewers, and then again the customers, are going to know, and the consumers are going to know that we're still producing quality beer. It's not going to be, taste different. It's not going to be of a lesser quality. It's just going to genuinely be better for the environment, and that's our goal. So touching on what I said we would do is the 100% employee owned. We're a part of a program called ESOP. That program, it says, we started transitioning and getting our stock back from public shareholders, and we started selling that to our employees. So that, again, it also speaks volumes to the investment and the willingness and desire that our employees have for our company to be successful. It's not like, you're using someone else's money, or if this project doesn't work out, doesn't really matter. No, our folks actually care, and we are going to be the best one to lead that pack. Moving down to why we think it'll be successful is, again, popping back up to that concept of there being a huge influx in the interest in beer. So the market is huge. The demographic has changed. It went from, the majority of being white males, middle-aged, to, I know 15% of the, consumers of craft beer are now female, which is a large change. So we've got folks from, different ethnic backgrounds, genders, ages, 21 and over, of course. But just overall, the culture of consuming adult beverages and drinking has changed. Granted, we still have those laws, such as, when you post a sign, the reasonable idea should be that 90% of the folks that pass that sign should, be 21 and older. So there's still a responsibility to encourage responsible drinking, but it's no longer seen as a negative, or it's no longer seen as, a characteristic defect if you enjoy drinking. It's a social culture. How many times after work, there's folks that go and they meet up and have a drink and they kind of de-stress. And it's also turned into an art form in some sorts, considering pairing this beer and these flavor notes to this food. For example, I know there's some bourbons that if you compare them or you pair them appropriately with cucumber, once you take a bite of the cucumber on whatever cracker, what have you, and then you take a drink of that bourbon, your cucumber tastes like watermelon. So understanding the different capabilities that alcohol have now, it's no longer just, getting drunk and passing out on the floor and being a bad parent or a sibling or what have you. It's something that is seen as a cultural change. But our main thing is that taking the culture of craft beer and uniting it with this demographic change and this culture change, because again, we're collaborative with our partners. We want to see these smaller breweries succeed, and we want to, again, change the process. And that's kind of how it's always been. I remember a while back, Sierra Nevada, they had found a process to process hops or yeast, and they shared those secrets with the entire community for those smaller brewers to see kind of how to do business and how to learn and how the big dogs, run their companies. And I think that speaks volumes, because we genuinely want to better the industry as a whole. And that's what we're really hoping to do. So in order to make this work and to better our environment, there will be 2 life cycles, how we foresee it going. So there's, again, those 2 projects that are concurrent. Project number 1 is the implementation of that software, and project number 2 is going to be the beer byproduct, which stands us apart from the other folks that will be eventually adapting these processes. So life cycle number 1, which is that software, it's going to be similar to that of how normal software programs go, except for it will eventually be installed onto one of our machines. So we broke that down into 5 phases. So you got your info gathering, which what we would do is in a preliminary meeting, we would present the idea to the stakeholders and see if it's something worth pursuing. We're under the assumption that that is, so we'll move into the budget development, estimated costs, etc., and really just get a rough plan out there, so that way we can take it to the stakeholders and say, hey, this is what we've got, what comments do you have, and then incorporate those and move forward. After we get everyone's comments and the estimated budget, and we figured out with our finance team how we're going to do it, then we would move into a design phase, which the design phase is when we actually have all of those engineers come and they develop the software, and they say, hey, this is how, based on your systems, this is how it's going to work. And what we want to implement is a 4-stage design reviews. So we'll have one at 35% complete, 65% complete, 95% complete, and then we'll have this bag check where at the end of it we kind of wrap everything up and say, hey, yes, stamp, 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 we're good to go. Everyone's full implementation and the testing. And in a little bit, I'll get into how those design phases will work and how you all will play a part, obviously, as the investors and stakeholders. So after that design, everybody says, hey, good to go ahead and implement. We would put it into testing. So they would develop it, and they would put it into testing, and they would test small batches of beer to ensure a couple of things, to really see, does it work? Is it making a difference in the energy usage? How much slower is it going to be? So for example, I said on that eco-friendly button on your vehicle, it's less gas to the engine, so you go a little bit slower. How is that going to affect the actual process of beer brewing for us? Is it going to affect production costs? These are things that we have to actually test and experience. And then again, ensure that there's no product degradation during this implementation, because at the end of the day, we need to find a way to make sure our product stays as full of quality as it is as now, and the flavors stay the same, and we really don't lose any of our customers during this time. So testing goes great. We can move on to the actual implementation, where we install this device on all of our machines, which should take, it wouldn't take very long, considering however many machines we have over the 2 locations of Asheville and Fort Collins. But once those are implemented, we go straight into operations and management, where at this point, there'll be a trial period, maybe of 6 months to a year, where we look at that engineer that came in, if it's something that we need as a permanent position, or is it something that we can teach one of our other engineers and we could just contract them for that 1 year salary, what have you, versus like an hourly rate, because we never know how many hours they'll actually need into this project, so it's better to put them on annual salary, considering the longevity and the length of the period of performance for this effort. So we're in operations and management at that point, where we're just maintaining the systems and really just trying to get those small breweries whom have not invested yet into the idea to try to figure out, hey, are you interested? If you're not, why? Can you pay up front? Do you need to finance? And just go from there. So back to those design reviews, how we envision those happening is, so a design is submitted by the engineer to the technical expert, which the technical expert would be an engineer above that person, and then it's more of a team, so the engineer, another engineer, and then a brewmaster. Those folks make comments, and then we, the CEOs or head leadership, take this package, the design package, and comments, and take it to the stakeholders, and decisions are made, whether the comment is a suggestion or the comment is a requirement, if it's a preference or it's a regulation, things like that. So there'll be decisions made, and then we'll take those back to the designer and that engineer, and they will implement and then move on to the next percentage. Of course, if there's something detrimentally wrong, we'll make them reaccomplish that portion of the design. So they might have to redo their 35% design. And then, so that is kind of how we envision part 1 going, project 1, life cycle 1, and then we move on to project 2, which is again going to happen concurrently, which is the actual beer byproduct, which again will set us apart from those other folks that are just adopting to the adopting the actual process. So once the system, the software, has been put into the installation, the implementation phase, basically when construction is occurring, we will have an internal contest where we have our head brewmasters say, hey, this is what we're targeting. We want something that embodies going green, and we want something that embodies, our huge market change. Make me something seasonal, make it something that's popular, and make it something that's going to go fast, because we're only selling 10,000. So it's going to be a limited product. Once a winner is chosen, marketing, how we see it happening is implementation is occurring, we have this contest. Once the construction and the installations are finished, we're ready to go into operations and management. We'll have that concept ready for you. So construction's done, concept's ready, we go straight into brewing. And we can brew that beer, and at that point our marketing team will come in and they will begin to put packaging together for our other beers that show this Go Green deal. And eventually what I want to see is that on every single package, 6-pack or what have you, it'll have that official logo, which will be developed by our marketing team, that says, this has been brewed by whatever cool system we create. So we're kind of basing it off of the concept of showing our consumers and our customers that this is really cool. There's only going to be 10,000 of these very first ones. Maybe it'll come with a collective glass or something, but we're really focusing on that premiumization, paying for something more for something that's good because it's worth it. Okay, so I've discussed how we're going to implement it, why we're implementing it, our plan, all of that good stuff, and let's talk about the reason you're here, is the money. As I said, because you all know we're 100% employee owned, you are my son, and so I wanted to kind of get to the estimates and the numbers that we came up with. When you consider packaging for the new beer that we're going to be creating, the ingredients, the special glasses that we're considering putting into the little limited edition deal, the installation of the software, which is based on the RS Means Guide, which I'll discuss, and the development, we're looking at about $261,000, and to add for contingency planning, we wanted to put that up to $275,000. Where I came up with the installation price is about $100,000, which what we would do is we would ask our contractors, because again we don't have in-the-house construction folks, to base their prices off of RS Means, which is a guide that says this is the national average, and then they'll add a city cost to the area we'll be doing. So our Asheville location will use the Asheville city cost, and then our Fort Collins location will use that, and it'll come up with a realistic price for that discipline of construction. So they're installing something, right? So it'll say this is normally $5 with these 4 people, so we know we're getting a fair and reasonable price. But at the end of the day, our annual revenue is $245 million. So based on, the percentages, I think that this is something that could absolutely 90%, if not 100%, be internally financed. However, we're going to hold out that 10%, which again, that percentage is able to be moved because it's really dependent on how much feedback we get from our smaller breweries to see if they want to invest in the front end. So we're going to kind of leave that portion open for external financing, just to say, hey, I was a part of that. I, put my money down at the front end versus when everybody was doing it, and I was able to change my budget or what have you. So I think that's something that's promising. It's kind of a small endeavor that's going to change a big process. So like what I said is I need from you all your improvement or involvement and approvals, because again, this will be impacting our budget, because I do want to internally finance the majority of it, but it'll also be impacting a process. So because it's a huge process in a company that you all are working for and invested in, it's important for you all to know that this is coming, and I want your all's vote on it. So if you all raise your hands and say, yay, let's go for it, let's press and install this software, start developing it, and really helping our community, we're going to be making a big impact, which I took this from the EPA, the Environment Protection Agency, and they say producing and using electricity more efficiently reduces both the amount of fuel needed to generate electricity and the amount of greenhouse gases and other air pollution emitted as a result. Electricity from renewable resources such as solar, geothermal, and wind, which we've checked off, generally does not contribute to climate change or local air pollution since no fuels are combusted. So moving to this system, moving to this eco-friendly button, if you will, we have the potential to reduce the footprint for all of our future generations who want to enjoy this phenomenal craft that we have brought to the world. So again, my name is Jess Cooper. I'm really hoping that I can convince you to raise your hand and say, hey, let's go for it. Let's change the industry, because I'm really excited about it. And I know that we have a huge potential here to make a big change. So thanks again. What we talked about overall is a lot of good stuff, actually. So the main takeaways here are, again, the problem: brewing is inefficient right now and we're using a lot of energy. Need for change. This isn't sustainable for the longevity of the domain, the industry, and we're going to be. It's hard to have a product that you sell in an industry that doesn't exist. The fix, which is again adding that software and kind of our little foot stomp that's going to make us some extra money, is the beer byproduct, which will be the first beer brewed by this really cool system, Wine New Belgium, because we're #1 in the sustainment community. We're seen as one of the top go green or eco-friendly breweries, so we have a lot of weight to pull, or we have a lot of pull in that area. Involvement from you all is please, please, please say yes. We can go ahead and push forward with this endeavor and change the industry and the future, which is a realistic and a phenomenal change to our future industry, which pretty much just hopefully eventually would erase our footprint, because this is a bubble that has blown up and we don't really see it going back down. So thanks again.